This is ICCC history in the making. This is the very first live interview with Tom Clark, Director of Marketing and Product Manager for the Kenner Star Wars line. He's here with us live. This is his first time at ICCC. Give Tom Clark a big round of a welcome to the stage. Come have a seat. Let's chat.
Let's do.
These people want to hear all about your time with Kenner.
You don't want to know all of it.
I'm going to give you the floor for a minute. Let's tell me just a little bit about who you are and how you got started with Kenner. Maybe tell me about your job interview. We're going to take it all the way back. Well, let's go back before Kenner.
I'm not so sure I can remember that far back, but we'll give it a try.
Where were you before Kenner in your career?
Before Kenner in my career, I was with two companies. One was Welch Foods Grape Juice, which was great for me because I loved drinking grape juice. And the other after that was Quaker Oats, and I was responsible for their what they call human foods, new product development. So that was all kind of pretty cool. The situation with new products back in that time, back in the middle 70s, is that companies were no longer really investing much in new products at that time. There was a recession going on. And so I was pretty bored. Then I got a call from a recruiter who said, "Would you consider the toy business?" And I'm like, "Toy business? My job would be to play with toys?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd be interested in figuring that out." And so I go, they set up an interview, and I go in there and start talking to people, and it's like I had no idea what the heck was going on. One guy, during the interview, he said to me, he says, "Are you creative?" And I'm like, that was like my freak out time. I'm like, oh my God, I never knew how to, I don't know how to answer that question. I said, "Well, what did you do that's creative?" And he said, "Well, you see this Stretch Armstrong?" I don't know if anybody here is old enough to remember that. And he says, "Well," here we go. He said, "Well, I took that concept and I made it into a stretch octopus." I said, "Well, if that's creative, I'm creative." And so, we went on from there, and I think I must have talked with, probably 7 or 8 guys, and they took me right up to the, including the president. And the first thing he says to me, or the last thing he says to me after the interview, he said, all right, Tom. He said, "If we hire you, you're not gonna work on Star Wars." My response, "What's Star Wars?" I had no freaking idea what Star Wars was. And he said, "Oh, you know what? It's a new license we have. We're gonna save it for a senior person." I'm like, "Yeah, cool, no problem." So then they send me back down to HR. HR says, "Well, Tom, we'd like to offer you a job." I said, "Great." And they said, "But we need you to do some psychological testing." And I'm like, "What? No way." I mean, back then they were saying, "No, you do not subject yourself to that kind of stuff," right? And I said, "No way." And he goes, "Why? Well, why not?" I said, "Well, let me ask you this. Are you telling me your president doesn't have enough confidence in his judgment to hire me?" And but, and I said, forget it. Yeah, well, I'll be glad to do it. It's got to be done on a weekend because I couldn't take another day off of work or whatever. And so I went to Philadelphia. Oh my God, how agonizing. I couldn't find the place. I was running late, and it's like, oh my God, and they're testing me. Finally found it, got in. It was nothing but a ball. I mean, it was all sorts of logic and reference things, and it was a ball. I had a ball for like 3 hours, right? That was on Saturday. Monday, I get a call from the company. "Tom, we want to offer you a job. We want you to work on Star Wars. And we want you to see the movie 6 times before you start, and we want you to start in a week." And I'm like, holy shit, that's pretty cool. So I think what their concern was, here I am with a packaged goods background, a bit stuffy, a bit formal type companies, and then you go into the into the toy business. And I had some of my colleagues at the time saying, you know, you really don't want to go in that business. It's probably not suited. And it was like the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. It was like so cool. So cool.
We're happy that it happened for you. It turned out all right for us, didn't it, in the end? So your job at the time was going to be product director for the Star Wars line. What was your main task? What was your the main job that you had to do?
Right. I came in on the second year, so I missed the marketing part where Kenner sold an empty box. And I'm really glad because people didn't like that whole idea. And so my job was to pull together and make sure we had the toy line established for the last 2 years of that first movie. And the guys had done a really great job. You may have heard Jim talking earlier. You know, he was one of the first product designers on Star Wars and did a great job. And so he was a good help me along with that process. But where my job really came into focus was with the second movie, The Empire Strikes Back. And I was one of 3 people in the world, I was told, to be given a script outside of Lucasfilm. My job was to read the script, pull together a 3 years worth of toy line, being very specific about the price points for the items, the features of the items, and make that last for 3 years of the movie run. And so once I did that, I had to get Lucas's approval. And once he gave me his approval, my job then was to come back.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because when you say George Lucas gave you his approval, are you telling me that you met George Lucas?
That's one of the fascinating. I met with George Lucas one-on-one 4 times a year for 8 years.
And you were in contact with Lucasfilm very often as well, correct?
Yeah. That's my job. Can you imagine that being your job? I mean, my gosh. Yeah.
Hello, this is Lucasfilm. How may I help you? I'd like to speak to George, please.
So, you know, and the Lucasfilm people were just really, really great. So, but my job was to get George to say, okay, and his license department, bring it back to guys in our design and engineering department to say, okay, this is what we're doing, guys. And then kind of monitored that whole process. I mean, while my employer was Kenner and my job was Star Wars, the real thing that I was there for and established Lucasfilm's trust is to maintain the integrity of the brand. So no matter what we did, I had to make sure if a designer came up with a crazy idea that didn't seem to fit with really what that concept was, to kind of say no and to encourage other things. But at Kenner, we had such an incredible array of creative engineers and designers. You know what? And they are all into product integrity and brand integrity. So that was kind of the easy part. But yeah, every quarter I would go out and meet with Lucasfilm and George, and get their okay on products and just kind of make sure that all came through. Beyond that, just traditional related business stuff. I oversaw the production of 80 commercials, you know, during that period of time, toy commercials.
Let's take a look at one. You want to see one? You want to see a commercial? Let's take a look. I've had the opportunity to speak to Tom a little bit prior to this. I consider myself very lucky to have some pre-information. And one of the vehicles that stood out in your mind was the remote control sandcrawler. Let's take a look at the commercial video, and I think you have some stories about that sandcrawler as well. Okay. Let's roll the sandcrawler video.
New Star Wars radio-controlled Jawa Sandcrawler.
Let's find some droids.
2 9-volt and 2 D batteries not included.
The Jawa's got the Death Star droid.
Action figures sold separately.
Up the elevator. He's in.
By radio control, you can make the Sandcrawler travel almost any direction by going forward, backward, then forward again.
Now we'll find more droids.
Star Wars radio-controlled Jawa Sandcrawler. Action figures each sold separately. New from Kenner.
Aren't those awesome?
Wow.
this man, he directed the not the commercial, but the content and the action and what you wanted the kids to see Saturday mornings when they saw those commercials in between their favorite cartoons.
Sure. Yeah. Right. It was pretty fascinating. That one was a bit of a nightmare. As we were filming commercials, we were working with one-of-a-kind prototypes in many cases. That sandcrawler cost a bunch of money, and it was the only thing we had and the only thing that worked, right? So we had a toy show, and it was there, and of course, during a toy show, you want to do everything you can, right? So we're trying to get the figures to be kind of set up and make it look like a play scene, much like you see on packaging. We couldn't do that in the commercials because by law, if something was priced over, I think it was maybe $10 at the time, you could only include one or two action figures in it because of the reasonable value you would want a child to spend, right? So that was crazy. So we're at the toy show. I'm trying to set up the figures in this thing, and they just kept on falling over, right? I mean, they're prototypes. They're like this and that and broken up. So I super glued them all in. Well, I flew out that night, met with the production people that are going to pull together the commercial, and they looked at it, and I think it was 8 or 9 different figures super glued into this thing. Well, by law, we could only have 2 figures, and they had to be played with. They couldn't be super glued in this thing. And so they're looking at me like, do you have another one? No. So they called in some designer, not a designer, actually a model maker, and darn, if that guy didn't come back at call time, which was 10 o'clock in the morning, with that sand crawler that had no figures in it, looked brand new, good enough to be on film, and saved my life. Just saved my life.
It looked good to me. Did it look good to you? It was great. It was great focus and top-notch video quality from the 1970s.
I tell you, when I came back from that commercial shoot, I was summoned down to the model department. Mr. Clark, get your ass down here. So and they had 2 guys standing on each side of me. And then they pulled out super glue. And they looked at me, and he looked at all of his people out there. He said, if any of you ever give TC another thing of super glue, you will be fired, and I will glue you to him. And it was like, so I was doomed. No more super glue at that point.
Super glue is cut.
Yeah.
So in your travels, you traveled back and forth to Lucasfilm in California quite often. Did you? I hear you can run into crazy people at Lucasfilm back in those days. Did you ever run into anybody cool? Anything stick out in your mind?
The people at Lucasfilm were just all good people. Just good people. And so, I was kind of cautioned, fit in, right? Trying to fit in. So you meet George, you don't ask for an autograph, right? So first thing I know, I'm down there on my first trip, and we're in the commissary. And here's Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Princess Leia. I mean, they're all just kind of walking around, and I'm trying not to go like this, trying to act like a normal person. But that's how they were there. And it was like they made me feel like I fit in. It was part of it. They weren't special. I wasn't special. Everybody was just really, really cool.
You had lunch with somebody unique, didn't you?
Yeah. You mean I did my dinner?
Yes.
Time?
Yes. Sorry,
right,
dinner.
right.
Yes.
Well, one day during one of our commercial shoots, and we were out shooting just a lot of commercials. I was asked if I would mind having dinner with Darth Vader. I'm like, right. Why would he know me? And anyway, so next thing you know, I said, yeah, I'd be glad to have dinner with Darth Vader. So I'm standing there in front of the restaurant waiting for him to come, and I see a car parked over there, and this person gets out, starts walking over. Right? He seemed very normal. Well, when he got to be about as close as you are to me, like all of a sudden, this guy's like huge. And he's like, I'm like, holy cow, I was just shocked. And he was so well formed, and you know, he looked like a normal person until he got so close.
We're talking about David Prowse.
David Prowse, right. So, yeah, so that was cool. That's probably the one dinner, I think, the one dinner that was pretty cool.
You got the pre-look at the scripts. Did you ever get to go to any of the screenings or see the movies in advance?
Yeah, they threw that package in. It was like, just, it was nice. You know, they sent me to England a couple times for a day, right, to watch the film. Did I need to go? No. Did I like going? Yeah. It was definitely pretty cool. So.
There was a story that you told me several weeks ago when we chatted that had to do with a pre-screening meal that you had. You want to tell these guys that story? I think they'd enjoy that one.
Right. So we were, as a group, invited to the screening in L.A. on each of the movies, and there was a fellow named Dave Okada who ran our design department, and he was part of our group. He was from L.A. He liked sushi. I've never had sushi, but I like trying different things, right? So we go to his place called Terra Sushi in L.A., and here on the counter, I mean, you walk up here on the counter, this big, a mussel, and it's like moving, it's breathing, and it's not a toy. It's like, oh my God, he ordered some of that stuff for everybody. It came, and I had this much, but I ate it. My stomach was like this. I couldn't even eat popcorn in the movie, and I love popcorn. In fact, I used to work for a popcorn company. I could not eat popcorn. I was kind of ill.
That reminds
me. My
me
least favorite meal.
That reminds me of seeing Episode 7. Episode 7 I saw in 3D at the movie theater at Walt Disney World, and that 3D just turned my stomach and my head upside down. And then afterwards, Disney had this great thing. Go see the movie on opening night. Then we're going to throw a party for everybody at Disney's MGM Studios. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. But David's got a splitting headache after watching that movie in 3D. So I can relate. Let's see. You want to see some more commercials? Yes. Everyone loves the commercials. Let's run. I think we have one with a droid coming up.
It's Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back action figures. 47 in all, each sold separately. Here's new Bespin guards, AT-AT Commander, and Imperial TIE Fighter pilot. Now you can get this new 4 LOM action figure free for 5 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars action figures. Details on specially marked packages at participating stores. Offer expires August 31st, 1982. New Bespin guard, new AT-AT Commander, new Imperial TIE Fighter pilot, each sold separately. From Kenner Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back collection.
Something seemed a little wrong there. Let's roll one more commercial and make sure, see if they fix.
New Zuckus, 4 LOM, an Imperial TIE Fighter pilot, 3 of 48 action figures from Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back collection, each sold separately. And now, from Star Wars New Revenge of the Jedi collection, it's Admiral Akbar. Not available in any store, but free with 6 proofs of purchase. From any Star Wars action figures. Details on specially marked packs at participating stores. Offer expires January 31st, 1983. New 4 LOM, Zuckus, Imperial TIE Fighter pilot, and other action figures each sold separately. From Kenner Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back collection.
They did it again.
Can you imagine it?
Did you catch it? No? Well, yeah, but no. Go deeper. Shout it out. Zuckus. 4 LOM. That's not right.
No.
Who is this? Who is this we see on the screen?
That's 4 LOM, not Zuckus.
That's 4 LOM. Now, I have heard rumors, and I know some of my friends in the room have heard rumors over the year. And some may be true, but let's hear it from the mouth. Who named 4 LOM?
Well, I named 4 LOM.
And you confirm that this is 4 LOM that we're looking at on the screen.
I think so.
Can you tell us officially for the world, for YouTube, What does 4LOM stand for? Let's see if the rumors were true.
Ooh. Well, a little backstory, okay? A little backstory. This was the third year of the movie. Each of those 2 commercials was a third year of the movie, and we were trying to maximize volume. The volume was always low in that third year. People didn't want to spend lots of money on big, expensive things, so we focused on action figures. So as we're trying to go through and pick the action figures, we sent to Lucas, and they would send us back some. Well, they sent me 4LOM, didn't have a name. So I said to them, I said, well, look, do you mind if I give it a try, give a name? They said, no, go ahead, we'll pass it on to George. So I came up with 4LOM, and we'll talk about what that means in a half a second, because it was a real surprise with that. But then I got a letter back from Lucas, or Lucasfilm, that said, George is approving your 4LOM. And I'm like, great, right? Well, you know, a lot of you people are collectors. I am totally throwing everything out, okay? So I take that letter and I look at it and I said, now this is the time, by the way, when our market research guy would come through my garbage every night to pick up stuff like packaging platforms, different things that I just would throw out because I throw everything out. He put his 2 kids through college, 4 years of college, and had $250,000 left over from the stuff I threw out in my garbage. So I threw that letter out, right? So about 15 years ago, I was with Brown Shoe Company and introducing them to Lucas to do Star Wars toys or shoes. And I went out and met with Lucasfilm and a guy named Howard, I can't think of his last name, Rothberger, I think his last name was. He was the head guy over licensing, and we were just chatting about old times. And I said to him, I said, you know, I named 4LOM. He said, you did? I said, yeah. I said, don't you have that in your records? He goes, oh, I don't know. He says, yeah. He says, for love of money. I said, oh, no. For love or money. He fell on the floor. He said, oh, my God. He said, that makes him more ruthless than he ever should have been. So, yeah, see, they thought it was for love of money, and no, it was for love or money.
You heard it here first, folks. Officially, for love or money is what 4LOM stands for. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And what Lucasfilm did, when they couldn't figure out who named it, there were legal rights and things of that, they switched the names of those 2 droids so there wasn't any legal tie that some devious guy like me could go up and say, I named that and I own that name. But they didn't know. And they switched the figures.
Is anyone recording this for YouTube right now? You're about to go viral. That's some great information. Actually, that little tidbit of information, I challenged Tom. I said, Tom, can you figure out who made this mistake? So we got it. It's officially, they switched the names on purpose.
Yep.
So that it was a licensing issue. I think we've got one more commercial on Hoth. Let's take a look at this last commercial that we pulled. Everyone loves the commercials.
Long ago, in a galaxy far away, the Star Wars saga began, and Kenner continues the excitement.
We must capture Luke Skywalker.
Zuckuss, Imperial TIE fighter pilot, AT-AT commander, and Hoth Luke Skywalker, each sold separately.
Those guys don't give up.
Which way now, AT-AT commander?
He must be in here. We've got you now, Skywalker. Shoes on the other foot. I've got you.
Zuckuss, AT-AT commander, and other action figures each sold separately from Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
One of my favorite things to collect in the vintage Star Wars line is a series of mostly vehicles and accessories that were never seen in the movies. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Mini rigs. What can you tell us about mini rigs?
Great experience. It was really pretty cool. As I mentioned, our design team, they were incredible, you know, and they came up in our 4th year of that movie, needing to have a price point that was like a $4.95 price point. They came up with these little mini rigs, right? We called them Star Wars accessories. And to fit into that line, we based it on the Probot, which is from the movie, but it was in part of what we called that Star Wars accessories. Another part of that Star Wars accessory line was the Droid Factory, right? And so during our normal getting things approved process, the Lucasfilm licensing team did not allow us to do anything that was, any of those little mini rigs or the Droid Factory, right? Because they weren't in the movie. And so I just said to them, I said, great. I said, when we went out for our final approval, is it okay if I present these to George in the thing? They said, yeah, sure, go ahead, right? So we sitting there, and the first thing we pull out is the Droid Factory. And George is like looking at that, and I said, George, they had to be made somewhere. And he's like, oh my God. He said, that could have been in the movie. You should do that. And he put it in the movie. And so, he said, then they would have used that same place to pull together those mini rigs, et cetera. So it was really interesting to see someone not so attuned that it wasn't his idea, that it couldn't be done. But he felt that since it had that same kind of integrity and those other items had that same kind of integrity, it was okay to do. And he reversed in front of his licensing people. I think they were a little bit upset at first because, they're doing what their job was to do. But George was just such a broad thinker. And in fact, can I tell you another George story?
Go right ahead, please.
Man, this will just give you a sense of what this guy is like. I'm up there by myself in his private studio setting up a toy meeting, getting him quarterly updates. He comes walking in, walking down, and he says, and by then people were calling me TC, R2D2, C3PO, and people are calling me TC. So he's hey, TC. He says, you mind if I interrupt you? And I said, no. So I'm walking out. He says, well, where are you going? He says, sit down here. So he and I sit next to him. Up on the screen comes the first time ever seen, the last 20 minutes of Raiders of the Lost Ark with special effects. And I'm sitting there like I couldn't keep my mouth closed. And he looked at me and he says, Tom, he said, TC, it's just not right yet, is it? I'm like, oh my God. But it was just so gracious of him, to just, do you mind if I interrupt you? And I'm out of there. I'll sit down here. So it kind of gives you a sense of what he's like and what that whole company was like. They're great. I mean, even this hat I'm wearing, they were always so good to me. I guess this hat is a hat that's was available on one of the movies to the cast and the crew. And they were kind enough to send this to me, right? And again, not being a collector, I found a few years ago, fat down along with my Revenge of the Jedi shirts that they had sent me and stuff like that. And so I said, well, this is probably one item, I guess. And I've had a few collectors come up and try to, ask me if they could have a couple of the things I have. So, but this was just really nice of them. Another show.
Yeah, let's see what you brought.
Another show and tell.
I had originally asked Tom. I said, Tom, do you have anything that you can take photos of that I can show slides on the screens, anything like that? He says, I didn't keep a lot of stuff, but he was able to dig up a few things to bring and show us. So please, you want to model it?
Right. Well, here, the Revenge of the Jedi sweatshirt. I have 3 of these.
They are not for sale.
Never been worn, right? Some of the folks that have been walking through are collectors of T-shirts, and looking at these things, and they said they have a T-shirt, but they don't have this. Lucasfilm also sent me a one sheet that had a Revenge of the Jedi on it, and I have that, but it's got a hole in the belly button of it. I didn't bring that with me, but it's just kind of neat. It's kind of neat stuff.
Let's see the plaque. I was asking you about the plaque on the floor on your other side.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah.
This thing. This is just a nameplate. It's got my name, my initials on it, TC.
Don't forget your microphone.
Spelling out TEASEA, right? And,
show it right over here to YouTube.
Right. At the end of my tenure at Kenner in Star Wars, I was actually gone on. I accepted a job to run Tupperware's global new product development, and my colleagues at Kenner just gave me this nameplate, And so, you know, I've had license plates with TC1, TC2, or whatever on it. So that's just kind of a neat little thing, I think.
Tom, you told me that one of your, probably the biggest impact you had on the whole Kenner line through the several years that the toys were in production. You told me that you had one area you felt was the most impactful on, I would say, the toy industry in general, correct?
Yeah.
You want to explain what that was? I think a few of these guys might be familiar with it.
Yeah.
And if you guys can show the slide, I think you'll all know what I'm talking about if you don't already.
Yeah, there are two things. One is we were first to do a multiple purchase incentive. You know, so buy 4 figures or 5 figures, you get one free. So that was new to the industry. I mean, it's like, yeah, like so what, right? So and it was pretty cool. And then this whole thing here called the cross-sell books. Yeah, we just putting that together and trying to show all the toys.
Not only did you do the television commercials, you also did the little product pamphlets that came in almost every accessory or vehicle or any type of play set. Also on the back of the packaging of everything, you would have
my job was really just to manage and kind of run the business, oversee it. A big part of it is what that consumer was seeing, because that makes that integrity go a step beyond the company and into the public. And so I had to go and supervise the commercials, but for each package, all of the packaging that's written, I wanted to make sure that on the packages that we showed the kids how they could relive the parts of the movie with those toys. And so I wrote, I think he's got kind of a bunch of packaging stuff here. I wrote all of the copy on every package that showed the kids how to relive those parts of the movie. So
you saw the package where it said action-firing missiles or things like that, which we didn't end up getting action-firing missiles in some cases. Did you have anything to do with the rocket-firing Boba Fett? Because this, as everyone knows, mostly in this room, this was originally intended to be a figure that shot a rocket. Did that have anything to do with your department? Or was it just mostly your idea to put it out? And what was your reasoning for wanting to put out a figure in this way? It's a little unconventional than just going to the store and buying a toy.
Well, I think you've all got to agree that projectiles are the most fascinating thing you could have out there, right? And who could better have a rocket fire than Boba Fett? So I think it was just a few months before that when we announced it, Mattel with their Battlestar Galactica line, they had those things, and the kids were playing with them up here, not shooting rockets from down here, and a kid had choked and died from that. And so it was, I can tell you, there was only one time in my career at Kenner where I was not asked for my opinion, and this was it. Right during Toy Fair, our president came up to me and he said, "TC, we're not going to have a rocket-firing Boba Fett." I was not happy. I'm like, where's the play value? But then again, it's like quickly realized that if a child were to get injured playing with one of our toys, not only does that damage the integrity of Kenner and the integrity of Star Wars as a brand, I mean, it would just be, well, it would have been devastating for even future movies. You don't want to have that association. So as much as I burned a little bit, you had to understand it. And so he's still, Boba Fett's still pretty famous. So he did it without that rocket.
He did all right. Now, at the time when you had this idea to put him out with the proofs of purchase, nobody knew who Boba Fett was. Boba who?
Well, that's another neat thing with Lucasfilm. We came up with the free concept, free figure concept, and we wanted it to be from the new movie. So we figured, oh boy, we'll sell a lot of figures that way, and we did. But everything was Lucas. I mean, for Lucas was very top secret, right? I mean, that one script that they sent me of the 3 that are out there, it was numbered, signed, and And actually, they never asked me for it back, but I sent it back. And so I just lost my train of thought.
We were talking about the the Boba Fett.
So we convinced Lucasfilm that we could do it, and we were going to do it kind of akin to that empty box deal, right? Free secret figure, not telling anybody what it was going to be, and that's how we were going forward. And then the next thing you know, Lucasfilm calls up and said, "Would you mind if that secret figure was Boba Fett?" I'm like, holy cow, are you kidding me? That makes it even better, right? And he's the most exciting new figure in the whole movie.
You've read the script at this point.
Oh, yeah.
He knew who Boba. He was the only one who knew. There were 3 people outside of Lucasfilm who knew who Boba Fett was.
Yeah, at that point. So, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
We have just a few minutes left. I want to kind of open the floor because I know we have a lot of collectors in the room. Does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to step up to the mic so YouTube can hear you at home and ask away.
So for the Imperial troop transport, great vehicle, and it came with that comic book, to really explain that. Would that have been something that you had worked on with the marketing to help tell that story to the children? Or how did that comic book come to be with the vehicle?
So there was a comic book that came with the troop transport vehicle. I believe it was one of those. It was one of the marketing catalogs, if I remember correct. But I think it was in the comic book style. It's hard for me to remember.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know if that
happened
after me, or it could have happened in another country. Sometimes our Canadian affiliate did their own things, and they did other things. But yeah, I had nothing to do with that. Good idea, though.
Who else has a question? Go ahead. If you want to step up to the microphone, that way YouTube can hear you. We're putting people through their steps today.
Did you have any involvement or any idea on the blue snaggletooth problem?
The blue snaggletooth problem. Okay, so do you have your blue snaggletooth?
I happen to have one in my pocket.
Okay, guys. If you drool, you need to clean up after yourselves.
I was told I shouldn't be carrying this around, but I thought it was kind of one of the few things I have. Few people have stopped by to say, wow. In fact, blue snaggletooth turned to be a shorter red.
I think that's exactly what you were asking specifically.
Right. Okay.
Did you were you at Kenner at that time?
Yeah. I believe I was, and it was like fairly inconsequential for us. I mean, this was pretty cool, right? And Lucasfilm came and said, "Snaggletooth is too tall." And like, what do you mean it's too tall? Well, if you saw the movie going into the cantina, the real Snaggletooth, he was a short little guy. He came up and got to the bar like this, and this is the same size as all the other figures. So we had to change them. Why they changed it from blue to red, I don't know. I have no idea.
Security is backstage, and they will be following Tom back to his booth. Does anybody else have any questions? Please, sir.
Yeah, so the Death Star, the one with the thing with the little trash compactor and all that, what was your ideals of how did that come into being?
The Death Star playset.
Yeah, the playset.
What about it?
The Death Star playset. Do you have any insight? Do you have any recollection of that one specifically?
Well, I do, and it was not my favorite toy. I think there was a bunch of cardboard with it and stuff like that. I wasn't a huge fan of it, so I have not much insight other than we try to make as much of it as we could.
When you're talking about the cardboard, are you talking about the cardboard wall panels on the sides?
Right.
It was just not as
it didn't have the integrity, and it didn't have the integrity. But you know what? Those were days when they were trying to get something at a better price point, and you make compromises. Sometimes I don't like to make compromises.
That brings a question to my memory. There was a time. I mean. You look at the price tags on the toys. If I go in my collecting room, I can look at the price tags, and I'm like, man, I wish toys were that cheap today. But, for example, the Imperial shuttle, at the time that it came out, it was one of the most expensive toy playset/vehicles that existed.
Right.
At approximately, was it about $40? Does that sound about right?
Probably a little higher. Yeah.
50? About $50? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my recollection. And I don't have my photographic memory from my collection room. so about $50 in 1983 or 84. $50 is a lot for a playset.
Big dollars.
How
big
did
dollars.
Kenner justify such a big vehicle at a high price point?
Well, we had some good experience with the Millennium Falcon. And also the radio-controlled Jawa and radio-controlled R2-D2 were higher price points. But they were totally different play patterns. So the Millennium Falcon we were all very nervous about, because that was a high-end and the first time we ever did anything with it. I was sharing a memory earlier. When I was started with Star Wars, I was like 28 years old, right? So I'm like not knowing too much of anything. Next thing you know, we're in this Star Wars hoopla thing. And so the news people come out and they're doing an interview and stuff like that. And so they're wanting me to show and hold the Millennium Falcon. Well, I was just so nervous. The guy said, he says, so TC, he says, so tell us, what do you think about this Millennium Falcon? And like the only thing I could think of, I said, it's flying off the shelves. It's flying off the shelves. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. But based upon the success of the Millennium Falcon, we felt we could do other things that were higher price point, that had that play value. And as long as we could give a home for the action figures to play, and to then be, taking them from Tatooine to Ha to whatever, that pretty much, there weren't a whole lot of those bigger toys out there, but you'd have once, and we try to get them in the early years, that first year of the movie, for maximizing the value.
Being able to recreate those scenes was very important. Was that important to Lucasfilm, or was that a directive from Kenner, or both?
I'm sorry, repeat?
As far as the playability of the toys and being able to recreate the scenes from the movies, the kids being able to recreate their favorite scenes with their favorite characters.
It wasn't a directive from anyone. It just seemed natural, right? I mean, you
Common
play,
sense.
you relive, you just do it. And so I think that just was kind of subliminal part of that whole thing. Is anybody here familiar with the little micro stuff that we used to do? Okay. That was my favorite unsuccessful line. But I loved it. And again, we were trying to do die-cast things, right? We had some die-cast stuff, which were really cool stuff, but it didn't sell. It didn't have a whole lot of play value. It was higher priced. But then we sit and think, well, let's do Star Wars in a whole new scale and do die-cast of little figures, so it's not this big and cost a whole lot of money. And that was probably the most fun that we had pulling it together, because with that scale, you could do things that blew up and kind of, sides of Hoth caves that came off, and have all these different figures. And it was very reminiscent. When I was a kid, you had these army figures, and that's what the big play pattern was for me. And so I kind of was really quickly adapted to the concept of the micro collection. Thought it was a great concept.
We have just about 1 minute left. We have time for one more question. Narayan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The stories are wonderful. Thanks for sharing them with us.
You're welcome.
Can you talk about, are there any pitches that Kenner, marketing pitches that Kenner made that didn't come to fruition, or like Lucasfilm rejected, or something that you particularly can share with us?
I'm not.
Was there any marketing pictures or I would say pitches? Oh, marketing pitches that that Kenner or Lucasfilm just said, eh.
No. No. Well, you know what? I mean, first of all, we're taking everything from the movie, right? And as long as we executed it in truth to the movie, that was cool. And then Lucas, in that third year of the movie, sat there and looked at Droid Factory. That could have been in the movie. And that, to me, was a whole new opening. And to me, it just showed such big thinking about loving the concept instead of loving who's owning something and did something. Him sitting there thinking, that could be in my movie. And it's interesting because we were so shocked when the next movie came out, Revenge or Return, that the Droid Factory was in there. And so he obviously took that, wanted to make sure that integrity was maintained, and I think he put it back in there for us. But none of the other mini rigs were included, I don't think.
Tom, I could sit here and talk to you literally all day long, and I'm sure these people would probably sit here and enjoy that. But we do have to move on. We are on a schedule. So I want to say a warm thank you to you, Tom Clark. Thank you for coming to ICCCon and making this your very first convention interview.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Very special.